Marathon training with any amount of time that you have in the week needs to be celebrated first and foremost. It's no easy feat. And if you've got a busy life that means time's at a premium, then we hear you. We spent 20 years working full-time in exhausting jobs, then trying to get this YouTube channel off the ground, and then train for races and ultimately marathons. It's really hard. So if I only had a certain amount of time in my life to train, then I'll tell you what I'd prioritize and why, and I'm going to show you what my week would look like. First and foremost, we want to keep you safe and help you make the most of the time that you do have. Okay, before we get into what the week might look like, let's talk about the ethos behind the video, because I think that's important for you to understand where I'm coming from. The thing is, in an ideal world, we would have a set amount of time to train for a marathon, but we don't live in an ideal world. And what I'm aiming to do with the video is to provide you some priorities, provide you some insight to what I would do if I was marathon training with, say, for example, 4 hours. We'll also look at what I'd do if I had 5 and what I'd do if I had 6. Beyond 6 hours, I think you've kind of generally got room and time and space to make the training work in a number of different ways. But below that, you have to be pretty smart with it. We can help you, we can guide you in this video. We have a whole training community dedicated not just to marathons, but training for all distances that you might want to look into. It's an amazing place, over 200 people training for so many different races. But ultimately, we are committed to always putting out a lot of content for free because we just want people to love running. So if you have 4 hours, there is so much that you could do, but I'm going to prioritize it because I firmly believe in the saying that if you try and catch all the rabbits, you'll probably catch none. So it's better to just focus on a few core principles. So let's quickly talk priorities. In a marathon training cycle, you probably have seen lots of different things out there. Lots of people talk about how they train for marathons on social media. You will have seen people do the long runs. You will have seen people do marathon paced work within their long runs or even specific sessions. You'll have seen the word tempo. You'll have seen the word threshold, and you'll have seen the word aerobic based training or easy. Then you'll have seen strength and conditioning, and you're like, wait a second, that's a lot of stuff to try and fit into a week. So here's the priority list to keep you safe. Number 1, never skip the long run. We'll talk through how you build that, but long run has to be the priority. Second priority, easy running. That sounds counterintuitive. People are like, well, maybe, but shouldn't I be doing threshold? Shouldn't I be doing tempo? Or shouldn't I be marathon? No, listen, if you've got 4 hours, what you're telling me straight away is that you are super time crunch. You're probably on the beginner end of this. You definitely can get to a marathon doing easy runs and just being super consistent. I promise you that. Priority 3, strength and conditioning. Your body is going to be going through quite a lot of strain and stress through a marathon cycle, and I firmly believe without a really focused strength and conditioning idea or program, then it may well break down as you go. And you want to keep yourself from getting injured, and you also want to make the most of what your body can offer. So strength and conditioning is 3 on the priority list, and 4th on that priority list are sessions, what we might call threshold, what we might call tempo or marathon pace. These are definitely nice to haves, not must haves, particularly when we come to 4 hours of training within the week. Okay, priority list sorted. Let's talk through a 4-hour week. Let's just be really honest at this start point. 4 hours of marathon training per week is completely unideal. But as I said at the start of this video, we don't live in an ideal world. So how do we keep ourselves safe? So first, I'm going to go completely counterintuitive, because what you might be thinking is, well, I'll just do 3 runs, 2 of an hour and 1 of 2 hours. Now that's too much for the body if you're on the newer end of things, in my opinion, and I don't think it's the best use of the time that you have. So I'm going to suggest this, completely counterintuitive. We are going to go 3 runs if you have 4 hours, but we are not going to fill those 4 hours with those 3 runs. We're actually, in the early days of this, we're going to prioritize going hard on strength and conditioning, and we're going to dial that down as we go. Because if you look at the research behind what strength and conditioning can do, not just for your running, like for your life, then it is a no-brainer. Secondly, obviously it depends on your starting point. If I say we're going to do 2 runs of 45 minutes and a run of 60 minutes, but you've never run beyond 20 minutes before, then that's not realistic, and there's probably things you can do before you get to the marathon training cycle that I would suggest you do first, like maybe train for a half marathon or a 10k, because you likely have time, and then you want to arrive at the start of this 18-week cycle being able to run roughly for 45 minutes as a minimum. That's what I would suggest if you're going to take this on. And we are simply going to prioritize consistency. We're not going to do sessions. Like I said, it's probably the last of our priorities. We're not going to do tempo, marathon pace, or we're not going to do threshold. Now, I'm not saying that you go out and do all your runs super easy, because when you only have this amount of time to play with, I would suggest that you go out and you just run. And some days you might find it hard and it might be, slow, and some days you might feel great and you can run a bit faster. But I don't think specific sessions, if you only have 4 hours a week, is going to be helpful. So it's going to be super tough, and you need to know it. And you need to take a good look at yourself before you even start the training cycle. Look at your phone. How much time do you spend on it? Where are your downtime moments? Do you have spare time where you could squeeze a little bit more? But if you just have 4 hours, I would do it like this. I would do 2 runs of 45 minutes and 1 run of 60 minutes, which is the one that's going to build into the longer run. That actually leaves us with 90 minutes, believe it or not, for strength and conditioning. That's a lot of time, but bear with me, that's a great amount of time. And you can either do this in 2 ways. You can put it on the other days. So you could say that you have 3 days of running, 3 days of strength and conditioning, and a day off, and that could look like this. Or you could stack it. You could do your run and go into strength and conditioning afterwards, either at home or in the gym, so that ultimately your day is more like, instead of 45 minutes, it's an hour and 15, but you've done the run and the strength and conditioning. And then you're only taking 3 days out of the 7 to train for your marathon. But you're making use of your time, essentially. And I would do that for the first 8 to 9 weeks, slowly building that long run from, say, 60 minutes to 90 minutes. That's all you really need to do for the first entire half of those 18 weeks. And in the second half of that marathon training block, I would have 2 runs at 60 minutes, and I would build the long run gradually to 2 hours. Now, does that leave much time, if any, for strength and conditioning at the end? No, but you've front loaded it. You've made sure your body is strong, and then it's all about trying to maintain it with the running and squeezing time, if you have it, to do any strength and conditioning. But you've gone hard at the start to try and have a stronger body for later on. Now, the only caveat to all of this is if you are a slower runner and you only have 4 hours, really it's going to be about as tough as you're going to get, to the point where I'm like, maybe it is difficult to train for a marathon. But if you are committed, then I would think about doing this. I'd just do 1 run of 60 minutes within the week, and then at the weekend I'd become a weekend warrior, and I would eventually build to 2 runs of 90 minutes, and I maybe even would do 1 on a Saturday evening, 1 on a Sunday morning, so that you're getting 3 good hours of running close to each other, where you might get up to between 20 to 30 kilometers, which is about as good as you're going to get with a 4-hour running week. But what if we had 5 hours? What if we had just 1 extra hour? Right, 5 hours, now it gets interesting. We're getting towards what I would consider perhaps the kind of median amount of time that people have to train for a marathon. It's probably a little bit more than this, but if you're a beginner or a novice, 5 hours would represent probably quite a good amount of time if you have a busy life. And again, we've got to be looking at downtime as an opportunity to add extra bits. We'll get to that in a minute. But if I had 5 hours, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm adding a 4th run. I'm trying to make my week more standard, perhaps Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, however you want to schedule it. But I'm starting to have a 4-run week consistently. So the 4th run means you open up possibilities that perhaps you couldn't visit when we were doing 4 hours. And what I'm thinking is you then have, and this is how I've trained for a number of marathons before my body was able to do 5 hours, you then have perhaps Tuesday as a session day. Now that could be threshold, it could be tempo, could be marathon pace. You can also do something on a Thursday similarly. So at the moment we do threshold Tuesday, start with tempo on a Thursday, and that switches to marathon pace. But we have 2 sessions a week. And then at the weekend, that becomes more easy work, but it includes the long run. And again, if I'm on the beginner end of this, probably I'm still thinking I'll do most of my runs easy, because I think that the number one thing is get to the start line, be safe, be consistent, because you will make a ton of progress with consistency alone, particularly in the early days of training. The frilly stuff like lactate threshold, tempo, marathon pace, it is great, but it can come down the line, it can come with time. It's not absolutely necessary. It's a nice to have rather than a must have when it comes to marathon training. So again, I'm still front loading the strength and conditioning in my opinion. And what this can look like is we could have 3 runs in the week of 45 minutes, and we could start with a long run that will build, but start at 60 minutes. And that actually leaves you nearly 2 hours of strength and conditioning. And when you're putting these types of volumes through your body, I think front loading it, prehab, whatever you want to call it, that's creating a safer environment for you to train in later on when you can dial back the strength and conditioning and when the long run has to become longer. So my starting week, if I had 5 hours, probably looks something like this. And then potentially I would build it to 3 runs of 1 hour, which would give you 3 hours straight away. And then the long run could be starting at 90 minutes and building to even 2.5 hours, if not 3, depending on the speed at which you go. And then I'm looking at where is other time in my week? Can I be watching the TV in the evening and doing some mobility or strength and conditioning work? Can I be essentially clever within the week and utilize that time better? That's what I'm looking for, because I think if we're all probably honest with ourselves, there probably is time that we have that's more than we say, but it's just we consider it downtime, and it can still be downtime. We can watch TV whilst doing mobility. So by the end of the 5-hour training, as I say, I'm probably doing 3 runs of an hour. I'm probably doing 1 run of 2.5 hours, and I'm supplementing that with the strength and conditioning. And I'm doing my lactate threshold work, and I'm doing my tempo or marathon paced work. All right, 6 hours. I'd argue this is the sweet spot. If I'm honest, I would say it's definitely on the higher end for novices, and I think even for intermediates and some advanced runners, 6 hours represents, within a busy life, a really good amount of time that you could train for a marathon. Now, you can approach this 2 ways, and I'm going to explain both. You can stay with the 4 runs, particularly if you are more injury prone, I would say. 4 runs, giving yourself more rest during the week, that would work nicely. You could also approach it with 5 runs. I'll show you both. But the thing that starts to become really important when you've got about 6 hours is the separation of the sessions. No longer can you get away with, when you only had 4 hours, you could go out on your easy runs and you could kind of like, I'll just run. And sometimes it might be easy and sometimes it might not be quite so easy. You're just out there running, making use of the time that you have. But if you've got 6 hours, I think there needs to be some separation, because you're starting to really put some decent volumes in. And that means that the easy runs that you have in your week, they've got to be easy, because it allows for recovery, or a little bit of, and it allows for when you have the sessions or the harder runs, you to really put the effort in there and you're not tired from overdoing the easy runs. So the first thing is that you have to be way more disciplined with the separation of effort during the week, because that is a fast way to burnout or injury or overtraining if you're not. And strength and conditioning, it's still going to be important. You can't just do more running volume and think, well, I'll do less strength and conditioning. Your body needs to be conditioned in order to stay injury free, in order to take the volume that you're putting through it. So it's still going to be a priority, and you can do your threshold, you can do your tempo or marathon pace work. You could even think and play around within the long run, starting to put progressions in there where you get faster on feel or pace, or you could even do hotspots. All options are starting to be opened up to you, because you now have enough volume within your week to kind of be able to separate and be safe and keep the easy and the hard, all of those things. That's exciting. So if I was doing 4 runs a week, which I have done many times, it would probably look like 3 runs of 60 minutes and then 1 run starting at 90 minutes and building from there. So that's, as you can see, starting at 4.5 hours, we've still got 90 minutes to do strength and conditioning work. And that could look like 3 sessions of 30 minutes. It could look like a number of sessions of 15 or 20 minutes at home in the mornings, but you've got to use that time wisely. And if you're trying those 5 runs in a week, it might look like 4 lots of between 45 minutes and 60 minutes and then a 90 minutes, which again leaves you time for strength and conditioning. but that time will diminish as you go through the training cycle. We always look at training cycles as 18 weeks as a whole, and we're building volume across the weeks. Maybe some things we do more of in the early days and less of in the later days, like strength and conditioning. We switch tempo with marathon pace, but we're always looking to just generally build volume as we go, and nice and safely, whilst the body can keep up. And if we're using those 4 runs, then probably I'm building to 2 runs of about an hour and 15, which would be my sessions. They'd probably be my threshold and my marathon pace sessions. A run of about 60 minutes, and then 1 run of about 90 minutes to 120 minutes. And supplement after that with strength and conditioning. If I'm doing 5 runs, which is literally what I am doing for this Chicago Marathon training cycle, I'm probably doing an hour and 15 on Tuesday. I'm doing about 50 on Wednesday. I'm doing an hour and 15 on Thursday. I'm doing about an hour on Saturday, and I'm doing about an hour and a half to 2 hours on a Sunday, supplemented with strength and conditioning. Of course, I'm training a lot more than 6 hours, but that is what my week looks like, and this is what your week could look like. So if I had to decide whether I'm doing 4 runs or 5 runs within a week, really I'm probably looking at my experience as a runner. If I'm on the newer end, I'm going to decide to do 4, focus on the strength and conditioning, and maybe factor in a little bit more rest and recovery. If I'm a more experienced runner, 5 runs will do you the job. You might need a little less strength and conditioning, although you never need none. Remember that. I've seen so many people make amazing progress on consistency alone and just keeping their runs of an easy nature, and sometimes they run a bit harder when they feel good, but they're not particular sessions. Really, it's just about making the most out of your time within your life. If you're above 6 hours, oh man, dream world. By the time you're watching this, we have 1 week until Sydney Marathon, which is exciting to the extreme and terrifying. So the next few videos are going to be really Sydney based, really Sydney focused. So make sure you get subscribed, but no hard sell. I'll put the start of the Chicago training video series here, which is where we are absolutely going all out for our PBs. And I'll put this helpful video here, which was the 6 things that I see that are the biggest mistakes that runners make that halt their progress. Let me know if you've got any of your own tips. Put them in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you at Sydney Marathon.